You feel the cool marble steps beneath your bare feet as morning mist curls through columns of gold. You wake to silence, one of those heavy, mythic silences that feels like it's been waiting for you since the beginning of time. The air is thin up here, not cold exactly, but charged, as if the whole mountain is holding its breath. Olympus, they call it, tall enough to scrape the edge of the heavens, remote enough that no mortal is supposed to wander up this high, and quiet enough that you can hear the clouds shifting beneath you. That's right, beneath you. You're already in the domain of gods, and you haven't even had breakfast. You take a slow step forward, your toes brushing against marble worn smooth by immortal footsteps. The stone is cool and slightly damp, kissed by the last of the night mist. The columns to your left glow with the softest gold, catching the blush of early light like they're posing for some divine fresco. Somewhere in the distance, there's a faint echo of wind chimes or lyres, maybe drifting from a balcony where Apollo's been up all night, composing tragic ballads no one asked for. There's no grand procession waiting to greet you, no trumpets, no doves falling from the sky. Just the distant rustle of olive leaves and the slow pulse of sunlight sliding over cloud banks like honey poured over stone. You hear the sky itself groan a little, as if the fabric of the world is stretching, yawning, waking up. And then, somewhere above, a soft boom, not the terrifying kind, not yet. Just a casual god clears his throat type of thunder, which means Zeus is awake, that. Or he sneezed. Honestly, with Zeus, it's hard to tell. One minute he's hurling lightning bolts, the next he's shape-shifting into a swan to flirt with mortals. Greek mythology doesn't really believe in healthy boundaries. You walk toward a courtyard bordered with cypress trees and laurel hedges, and the smell hits you, fresh rain on warm stone, crushed rosemary underfoot, and a faint trace of ozone left behind from one of last night's tantrums. You can just imagine the scene gods arguing over wine, Hera rolling her eyes so hard it causes a minor earthquake, Dionysus dancing barefoot across the tabletops, and someone, probably Hermes, blaming the whole mess on a mortal who wasn't even invited. The breeze here is strange. It hums like it knows stories. You let it brush over your shoulders and through your hair, and for a moment, you wonder what it would feel like to live up here forever, in this shimmering, dysfunctional palace in the clouds, where no one ever really dies, but everyone seems constantly on the brink of dramatic disaster. A sudden flash, a literal flash sparks from a distant balcony. You glance that way, half expecting Zeus to be roasting marshmallows with a lightning bolt, but it's just the sun catching on one of his ceremonial shields. Or maybe it's his ego. Hard to tell the difference. You pass by a pools mall, circular, perfectly still lined with black obsidian and fragrant with floating bay leaves. The surface reflects a patch of sky so clear and blue it makes your chest ache. Somewhere nearby, you hear the soft flutter of wings. Could be Hermes again, darting off to deliver a love note, or steal someone's sandals. He does both with equal enthusiasm. Now, you're in the heart of Olympus, a great open forum, paved with stones the size of chariot wheels and ringed with statues that watch you with blank, heroic eyes. These are the greatest hits of the god Siege, one carved with the kind of muscle definition that could give modern gym ads a run for their drachmas. You pause beside one of Athena, her stone owl perched on her shoulder, and her gaze fixed somewhere off into battle, or maybe just trying to ignore whatever family drama's happening behind her. In the center of the forum, a flame flickers lazily in a bronze basin. Eternal fire, they call it. Though you get the sense Hestia's probably tired of being the only one keeping it going while everyone else is out turning mortals into trees. You settle onto a wide marble step, cool beneath your legs, and let the moment stretch. The clouds part below you like someone peeling back a blanket. You can see the mortal world far beneath, a patchwork of vineyards and whitewashed temples and sleepy hills where farmers haven't even rolled out of bed yet. Up here, it's still and slow. A pause before the chaos begins. A place between time, and yet, the air tingles. Something always brews on Olympus. The gods are like a cosmic orchestra, beautiful, moody, powerful, and forever out of tune with each other. You half expect someone to come barreling around the corner, yelling something about a prophecy, a stolen chariot, or a fruit that caused a decade-long war. But for now, there is only quiet and marble and the low, patient breath of a mountain that has carried more stories than any scroll ever written. You hear the sky rumble like a broken drum as thunder cracks just over your shoulder. You don't see him at first. You feel him. That static prickle along your arms. The way the hairs on the back of your neck stand to attention. Like they know the boss is in a mood, somewhere above. Clouds are already gathering in that dark, theatrical swirl reserved for one particular god and his legendary temper. You glance up. Yep, it's Zeus. And he is, to put it mildly, not having a peaceful morning. You stand near the edge of a colonnade, one toe peeking out beyond the marble, and the wind snaps your robe around your legs like a disapproving toga. A bolt of lightning carves the sky knot, the kind that gently illuminates the heavens in romantic Greek poetry. But the full volume, no warning. Duck and cover kind. Thunder follows instantly, slamming down like someone just flipped a massive heavenly table. Which, to be fair, might not be far off. Because that's the thing about Zeus. King of the gods, lord of the sky, wielder of thunder and father of, well, too many. He's powerful. Yes. Commanding, majestic, but subtle. Not his thing. Graceful emotional regulation. Also not his thing. You move cautiously toward the great hall, where a pair of golden doors now stand slightly ajar. Inside, the usual chaos. Servants scurry like mice with anxiety disorders. A peacock feathers itself dramatically in a corner, and in the center, Zeus, all muscle and cloud-dark brows, is storming around in a robe that looks like it was woven from actual weather. Every step he takes, the marble trembles slightly. Every word he shouts, mostly about disrespect and insubordination, and where's my damn lightning staff makes a nearby torch sputter in fear. Apparently, someone has insulted his authority. Again. Whether it's a titan, a mortal, or his own reflection is unclear. Honestly, it doesn't take much. Last week, a breeze blew his hair the wrong way during a council meeting, and 3 nymphs got turned into pine trees. You duck behind a pillar just as another thunderclap rolls through the chamber. You can feel it in your bones. It's like the sky itself just coughed fire. But amidst the bluster, there's something weirdly theatrical about the whole thing. Zeus doesn't just lose it, he performs it. He paces like a playwright, gesticulates like a gladiator, and somehow always knows exactly where the lightning will backlight his face for maximum drama. He doesn't yell, he monologues. And just when you think he might actually hurl something or someone across the hall, a soft voice cuts through the storm. Darling, it says, calm, chilly, controlled, the kind of tone that makes flowers wilt and wars end. Enter Hera, queen of the gods, CEO of spite, and, quite possibly, the only being in existence capable of making Zeus sit down and shut up without using a bolt of divine force. She glides into the chamber, draped in peacock feathers and condescension, and raises one perfectly arched eyebrow. Again she asks, just that, no anger, no judgment. Just again, Zeus freezes. His thunder fizzles mid-rumble. He clears his throat, a long pause. Then, casually, he claps his hands and the clouds vanish like guilty smoke. The marble stops humming. The servants peek out. The peacock relaxes. You exhale, gently. Hera walks past him without another word. And Zeus Stormbringer, lawmaker, Skyfather Supreme follows, grumbling under his breath like a teenager caught breaking curfew, somewhere behind them. You swear you hear Apollo snort with laughter. Or maybe that's just the wind. You step out from behind the pillar and look up. The sky is calm again, painted in slow-moving gold and gray. You smell petrichorane on warm stone and the faint scent of figs roasting somewhere distant. The thunder's gone, but the electricity still dances faintly in the air. It clings to your skin like the memory of an almost argument, one you didn't have, but somehow still feel. Welcome to Olympus, where even the weather has opinions. and tantrums can start wars. You taste pomegranate and poison on the same breath as silk rustles behind the curtain. You hear it before you see her, the soft shuffle of fabric too expensive to wrinkle, the subtle click of sandals that have never once scuffed a floor. Hera doesn't walk, she glides, like an avalanche in slow motion, wrapped in perfume and political menace. You're back in the west wing of Olympus, far from the thundering chaos of Zeus' tantrum, and deep within a chamber that smells of crushed roses and something sharper beneath, like the inside of a fruit that's just begun to rot. The air here is thick with secrets. You brush past a curtain, soft as whispers, and there she is, queen of the gods, mother of the heavens, patron of marriage, irony of all ironies. Hera lounges beside a table carved from polished moonstone, one hand idly swirling a goblet of something dark and syrupy wine. Maybe, or the distilled tears of cheating husbands, scattered before her like tarot cards gone rogue or scrolls, tokens, bits of twine, dried flowers, and wax seals. You recognize them for what they are, a catalog, not of memories, but of grudges. You step closer, careful not to make a sound. Because here's the truth, while Zeus hurls bolts and roars at the sky like a mythological air horn, Hera operates on an entirely different frequency. Quiet, surgical, long game, if Zeus is a thunderstorm. Hera is a drought that slowly kills your crops and ruins your harvest festival. She doesn't forget, she doesn't forgive. She files you alphabetically and waits. You glance down. One scroll unrolls just enough for you to read a name Leto. You blink. That was centuries ago. And yet, here she is, still planning, still tweaking the fine details of poetic justice. Leto, mother of Apollo and Artemis. Once seduced by Zeus while Hera was off inspecting temples. What followed Hera banned her from giving birth anywhere the sun touched, which, in case you're wondering, includes basically the entire planet. You have to admire the commitment. Another token catches your eye, a little ceramic cow, glazed in red. Io. The priestess turned into livestock after another one of Zeus' romantic oopsies. You imagine Hera smirking while assigning a sleepless, eye-covered monster to watch her. It's not justice, it's choreography. She lifts the goblet to her lips and takes a sip without looking at you. He thinks thunder scares people. She murmurs, but thunder fades, stories last. You try not to shiver. Behind her, a breeze slips through the tall windows, stirring the long curtains like gossip. You swear you hear laughter echoing faintly from the atrium, maybe Hermes teasing someone, or Dionysus already on his third breakfast wine. But here, in Hera's hall, it all sounds like distant static, unimportant. She rises, slowly, her gown falling around her like a silk landslide, and begins to pace. You follow at a respectful distance, the way one might trail behind a lioness inspecting her territory. You notice the tiny sighs she gives, the way her fingers brush each object as if it were an old wound. There's sorrow in her vengeance, but it's buried deep, packed beneath layers of dignity and precision and a crown that weighs more than all her grudges combined. She pauses before a painting one of Zeus, predictably shirtless, throwing a bolt across the sky with a look of divine constipation. She studies it for a moment, then, without a word, turns and continues walking. You wonder, for a breath, what it's like to be worshipped as the goddess of fidelity when your husband treats monogamy like a buffet line. You wonder what it costs to smile through ceremonies, to be carved into temple walls beside the very man who undermines you before breakfast. And yet, there she stands, not broken, not bowed, simply sharpened. She stops again, this time beside a pomegranate tree blooming out of a marble pot. You watch as she plucks a single fruit, weighs it in her hand, and then turns her gaze calm, calculating, ancient directly to where you stand. Do you know, she says, that even the smallest seed can poison a kingdom? You nod, or maybe you blink. It doesn't matter. Hera already knows the answer. You feel the vibration of bronze and brain as a goddess springs to life with a war cry. There's a headache, a big one, not yours. Thankfully, but belonging to Zeus, who, despite being king of the gods, seems just as susceptible to cranial pressure as the rest of us when divine drama gets too tightly packed inside his skull. You are standing in the Great Hall again, though it feels different now. The light has shifted brighter, harsher, as if the walls themselves are bracing for something loud and permanent. Servants edge out of the room one by one. Even the torches flicker nervously. And in the center of it all, Zeus sits on his throne, hands clutching either side of his head, muttering curses in 3 dead languages. Split it open. He growls. Now, you blink. To your left, Hephaestus, a blacksmith god with the build of a wrestler and the fashion sense of a soot-covered anvils. Shrugs like this is just another Tuesday. Without fanfare, he lifts a gleaming bronze axe. Yes, an axe. A very large axe. You step back, and then, with one clean swing and a sharp crack, it happens. The sound splits the air like a bell struck too hard, too close. A flash of light explodes from Zeus' forehead, and out of it, she comes, Athena, born fully grown, fully armored, and fully annoyed. Her sandals hit the marble with a sharp slap, and her cloak flares like a storm cloud as she lands in a crouch, spear in one hand, shield in the other, eyes glowing with something between genius and righteous fury. You feel the tremor ripple beneath your feet, not from her weight, she's as graceful as logic itself, but from the sheer idea of her. Because Athena isn't like the others. She wasn't nursed, swaddled, or even born in any traditional sense. She exploded into being with a battle cry and a mission statement, goddess of wisdom, war, strategy, olive trees, and very sharp opinions. Zeus exhales, relieved, pale, possibly concussed, and slumps back in his throne. Across the room, Hera narrows her eyes, clearly marking the moment down for later revenge analysis. You suspect there is already a scroll titled, "Daughters my husband birthed alone without me." Athena doesn't look at anyone right away. She just surveys the room, taking in the mess she's just landed in marble dust in the air, gods half hiding behind columns, Hermes holding up a "Welcome to Olympus" banner he obviously made 5 minutes ago. Then, calmly, she adjusts her helmet, sets her spear against the floor, and speaks. "I am ready." That's it. No dramatic speech, no self-congratulatory flourish. Just 3 words that carry the weight of 1,000 battle plans and 1,000,000 quiet revolutions. You get the sense she was born not just to fight, but to think, and then fight. Later, much later. She'll go on to mentor heroes, outwit monsters, build cities, and invent courtroom trials. But right now, she's just pacing the room like someone reading the world for the first time, analyzing, calculating, probably judging at least half the people here for their fashion choices. She passes near you, and you catch the scent of metal and olive leaves, of parchment and firelight. Her gaze flicks toward you, measured, precise, and for a brief, chilling moment. You feel as though your entire mind has been neatly indexed and filed in alphabetical order. You nod, respectfully, cautiously, possibly in Latin. Athena nods back once, then turns toward the exit, where the light has grown stronger, the sky now bleeding gold across Olympus's edge. She steps out into the day, and with her goes the first whisper of strategy, law, and reason. The others stare in her wake. Apollo whistles. Ares looks mildly threatened. Dionysus raises a glass and says, "Well, that was invigorating." And somewhere in the corner, Zeus groans, still rubbing his head. You hear the waves crash with an ancient rhythm, like a giant exhaling just below your toes. It starts with a tremor, not violent, just enough to rattle a goblet off a windowsill and make a few immortal eyebrows twitch. You're standing near the eastern cliffs of Olympus now, where the cloud floor gives way to a sea of sky, and you feel it, that deep, thrumming pulse beneath the soles of your feet. The sea is stirring, which means Poseidon's in a mood, the god of the sea. Earthquakes, and very questionable beard grooming habits. Poseidon tends to treat creation like a sandbox, sculpt something impressive, get bored, smash it with a trident, repeat. And tonight, Hes building again, you blink and suddenly, There it is, a city, rising from the sea like a pearl surfacing from the depths. You didn't see it a moment ago, but now marble towers glitter with salt crystals. Aqueducts curl like octopus arms, and bridges sweep elegantly from one island to the next. Dolphins leap through arches. Seagulls spiral through mist. It's honestly gorgeous. Poseidon stands at its center, bare-chested of course, because modesty has never been a divine virtue. His trident stabbed into the shore like a flag. His hair is dripping seawater. His eyes reflect the color of storm foam and vengeance. And he looks extremely pleased with himself. You walk closer, the stones beneath your feet still warm from their recent birth. Everything smells of brine, wet limestone, and something ancient like barnacles clinging to forgotten bones. As you pass a fountain shaped like a spiraling eel, you hear Poseidon muttering to himself about finally getting the recognition he deserves. And why shouldn't a sea god have the best temples? Of course, you're not the only one listening. Athena appears again, not with thunder, but with a breeze, cool and deliberate. She surveys the new city, raises one brow, and says, "Nice plumbing," which, in goddess speak, is barely a compliment and definitely a challenge. Poseidon frowns. He knows the tone. You stand between them now, one with the calm logic of stone, the other with the restless fury of waves. The argument begins the way all godly feuds do, with gestures, then insults, then a suspiciously large earthquake. Somewhere a harbor collapses, somewhere else. Dolphins take cover. At the height of the squabble, Zeus is summoned not out of any sense of justice, mind you, but mostly to stop the property damage. He listens to both sides for about 8 seconds before declaring that the city will go to whoever the mortals like more. Cue the first historical myth-based popularity contest. Poseidon jams his trident into the earth and creates a geyser of salt water. The mortals applaud politely, then cough a lot. Athena, calm as ever, plants a seed. An olive tree springs forth cool shade, nourishing fruit, oil that doesn't smell like low tide. The people love it. Poseidon does not. You barely dodge the tidal wave that follows. By the time the spray settles, the city belongs to Athena. The mortals name it Athens, and Poseidon well. He floods the suburbs, not too much, just enough to ruin everyone's sandals. You watch as the sea god disappears beneath the waves again, grumbling into his beard, leaving behind half a palace and 100 soggy myths. The marble glistens, the air tastes of ozone, and somewhere in the distance, a seahorse snorts. You feel the warm press of grapes beneath your heel and the dizziness of divine fermentation. You don't stumble into the party stumbles into you. One moment you're following a marble path down through olive groves under a lazily blinking moon, and the next, boomivy vines twist around your ankles. Laughter curls through the air like smoke, and a drum beat begins somewhere in your ribcage. The scent hits first crushed grapes, cinnamon, myrrh, and the faint trace of something burned that might be a fig or a philosophical manuscript. Who knows? Welcome to Dionysus's domain, the god of wine, madness, theater, transformation, and unbuttoned robes is already halfway into his 4th cup, reclining on a leopard skin, thrown over a golden chariot being pulled by actual leopards. Behind him, a procession of satyrs, maenads, and deeply confused philosophers tumbles through the trees, dancing like they've just been told gravity was optional. You step carefully past a woman laughing at her own shadow. A man is serenading a gourd. Someone else has painted their face gold and is reciting dramatic monologues to a tree. You get the feeling no one here knows the hour, or the year, or maybe even the species they're currently identifying as. And Dionysus, he raises his cup in your direction. "Come," he says, his voice slurring slightly with the confidence of someone who once turned a pirate ship into a vineyard. The world is a stage, but tonight, it's a dance floor. He claps his hands, vines burst from the ground, tables of food appear out of nowhere. Honey cakes, olives, roasted birds. Something that may have once been a goat, but now wears a crown of herbs. The wine flows freely, like gossip in a chorus line. You feel it, not the drunkenness, but the freedom. The way your limbs grow lighter, the air thick with music, the edge of logic beginning to bend just slightly, like heat shimmering off stone. This isn't a party, it's a release. From shame, from order. From the part of yourself that always asks, is this appropriate? Dionysus leans closer to you, his eyes ringed with coal and madness. Don't mistake chaos for weakness, he murmurs. Even the stars stagger. Then he turns and leaps onto a table, throws his arms open, and the crowd erupts like a volcano of glitter and shouting. Someone somewhere starts juggling torches. A satyr tap dances on a lyre. A philosopher cries openly into a basket of pears. And just when you think it can't get any stranger, someone whispers, "It's time." A hush falls. Dionysus raises his cup. Everyone watches, and then he drinks. The crowd follows, you follow, and the world tilts. Suddenly, the moon has antlers. The trees begin to hum. You see a mask on the ground, comedy on one side, tragedy on the other, and you wonder which one you're wearing right now. The night stretches like honey, slow and golden. Everything is both hilarious and heartbreaking. This is Dionysus's gift, not just to intoxicate, but to transform, to let you become, for a moment, the version of yourself you only dream about when no one's watching. Eventually, you find yourself alone beneath a fig tree, the stars spinning gently, your breath slow, your hands stained with grape skins. The drums have faded, the laughter's grown soft. You hear the hiss before the stone, the sound of a warning, too late to heed. You walk deeper into a colder part of the world, past temples now, overgrown with ivy, where the statues no longer stand proud, but crouch in postures of panic, arms frozen mid-scream, mouths open in an eternal plea for a mercy that never came. The air here is sharp, not from wind, but from silence, the kind of silence that creeps in only after 1,000 warnings have been ignored. You round a bend in the crumbling path and see her Medusa, or rather, the place where she waits, because she is not a monster that leaps. She is a moment. She is a gaze. You step carefully, the crunch beneath your feet unnerving. It is not gravel, it is fragments, bone-white shards of former curiosity. Brave men, foolish men, men who thought themselves immune to myth because they had swords and confidence. Now they're decoration. The cave opens like a throat and you feel the temperature drop. It smells of wet stone, old bronze, and the faint trace of blood too ancient to clean. Medusa does not come rushing toward you. She does not need to. She simply exists, coiled in shadow, breath slow, heavy as grief. Her hair shifts, not hair, snakes, dozens of them, draped like living braids, hissing softly to each other, as if retelling jokes that end in screams. You cannot see her eyes, not yet, and you do not want to. The legends were not wrong, a glance is enough. And yet, here is the twist the poets leave out. Medusa wasn't always this. She was once a woman, beautiful, sacred, devoted to Athena, until she was violated in the very temple she vowed to protect. And for this, she was cursed, not the violator, her, because Olympus loves symmetry, but not justice. Now, she lives here, part creature, part memory, entirely fury. You don't speak. What would you say that you understand, that you're sorry? Your throat tightens. The snake's quiet. She shifts. Just a breath. The cave doesn't echo. It absorbs. You remember the myths. Perseus, clever boy, didn't look directly at her. He used a mirror as a polished shield, and it worked. But even then, even in death, her gaze retained its power. They used her head like a weapon, like a trophy, like a warning. This is what happens when a woman becomes too much. You keep your head low. Your heartbeat thuds in your ears. You take one step back, then another, and then she speaks. Her voice is nothing like the hissing tales. It is low, even, and so tired. Are you here to look or to leave you? Answer not with words, but with stillness. The snakes calm, the air warms. You are allowed to go. Outside, the statues remain, their stories, frozen, their pride, shattered. But you are different. You carry her silence with you now. You carry her truth. You smell burning laurel and old dust, and hear words that feel both yours and not yours. You step slowly into the sanctuary, your fingers brushing the rough grooves of stone columns that have stood for centuries without moving, but somehow feel like they're watching you. The air here is thicker than in the olive groves you left behind, not just with incense, but with something more ancient, something that hums just beneath your skin, like an old name you've almost forgotten how to pronounce. You pass under a frieze of carved figures: Apollo with his golden lyre, supplicants kneeling, their hands open not in worship, but in desperate, sweaty hope, and the scent of burning laurel hits you, sharp and dry, mingled with something faintly metallic, like the breath of a coin freshly struck. You descend deeper, your sandals echoing faintly on the cracked marble, past priests who say nothing and acolytes who look both 20 and 5,000 years old. At the center of it all is the Pythia. You do not speak first. No one does. She sits over the fissure, smoke rising around her bare arms, her mouth slack, her eyes closed but twitching slightly as if dreaming someone else's dream. Her skin glistens not with sweat, but with a sheen of something unworldly mist, perhaps, or vapor, or maybe just the residue of too many gods whispering through her bones. Around her, the temple creaks like a ship made of stone, and the wind outside moans as though trying to remember a language lost when the world was still young. You try to frame your question, something simple, something you've rehearsed, but here, beneath the golden statue of Apollo, with your voice caught in the rising heat, words come out in strange order. You hear yourself speak, but it's like listening from underwater. The Pythia opens her mouth, and the world tips. She doesn't answer your question, not directly. That's not how this works. Instead, she sings, almost, but the melody has no notes, just rhythms. She speaks in riddles, images, contrasts. The flame that burns on both ends feeds no hearth, she says. The man who kneels to the sea will drown in the mountains. Then her head tilts back. When the black bird builds its nest in the crown of the sun, the city will fall from within. You blink, you breathe, you try to remember your question. She gasps suddenly, violently, as if yanked by invisible threads back into her body. Her hands clench the arms of the stone chair. Her eyes open wide and see nothing. You watch as her lips tremble, and she whispers, this time softly, you already know. You don't, but you say thank you anyway, because that's what you do here. You bow to ambiguity. You kiss the foot of mystery. You walk back up the stairs knowing both more and less than you did before. And that, somehow, is the point. That's the beauty of Delphi, the cruelty of prophecy, the seduction of answers wrapped in fog. Outside, the sun has moved, the wind has changed. Somewhere below, the priests are chanting. You step out beneath the wide, ancient sky, the riddle echoing still in your ears like a coin dropped down a well without a bottom. You walk down the mountain path, slowly, silently. You smell the sap of freshly cut wood and the tension of a city about to make a very bad decision. You stand at the edge of the walls of Troy, the wind curling around the ramparts in long, lazy spirals, carrying with it the scent of pine, pitch, and something suspiciously too recent to belong to peace. The ground is strangely quiet, the kind of quiet that follows after too many years of yelling, and finally nobody has the energy to shout anymore. The Greek ships are gone, or at least that's what everyone says. Their black sails, those ominous curtains of war, no longer blot the horizon. The campfires have turned to cold ash. The only thing left is, well, that. It's big, really big, comically big, standing right there on the sand like a monument to both craftsmanship and audacity. The wooden horse towers above the beach, its flanks curved and polished, its head angled toward the city like it's staring straight at your bedroom window. The Trojans gather around it with the cautious fascination of people who've just received an unmarked package labeled, "Totally not cursed." You walk with them, your hand brushing the rough grain of the rampart, the stone still warm from the day's sun, your other hand trailing the rope that's just been used to lower the gate for the first time in a decade. And there it is, the horse. It's a gift. They say, a peace offering. They say, an apology sculpture from the Greeks who, let's not forget, spent the last 10 years catapulting livestock into your walls. Laocoon, a priest whose hair is mostly nerves at this point, steps forward and says, The thing everyone's thinking we shouldn't trust this. I don't care how shiny it is. But he's old and tired, and honestly, people are done being cautious. And just as the debate starts to take on actual traction, Poseidon never one to miss a plot, twist sends a sea serpent, or two. They slither up from the surf, grab Laocoon and his sons, and squeeze until all that's left is a warning no one wants to think about anymore. You feel the panic ripple through the crowd, but it's a quiet kind of panic. The kind that doesn't spark rebellion, just resignation. The gods have spoken, the horse stays, the horse enters. You walk behind it now as the ropes are tied to its legs, and the crowd cheers louder than it should for a giant equine statue that smells like secrecy. The wheels groan against the sand, and you feel the tension vibrating through the wooden floorboards as it rolls across the city gate. Too wide to ignore, too suspicious to accept, too impressive to resist. You wonder, briefly, if it's hollow. Then you wonder why you're wondering that. Then you keep wondering, and then you shrug like everyone else. By nightfall, the horse stands in the center of the city like a second Acropolis, casting long shadows across the courtyards and towers. You dine under torchlight while musicians pretend this is all normal, while dancers whirl past you like nothing just changed forever. There's wine, there's music, there's the illusion of peace so seductive you start to believe it's real until the fire. You hear it before you see it, the creak of wood not from wind, but from movement, the sound of metal against rope, the sudden, too loud silence just before the scream. You run. You don't know where to go, because the city is burning now, and the horse that seemed so magnificent a few hours ago has cracked open like a nightmare egg, spilling out warriors who've been hiding in the dark with too much vengeance and too many knives. You pass a temple collapsing under its own betrayal. You smell ash and iron and something final. And somewhere, through it all, you remember Laocoon's face. You remember the look, not of fear, but of being right. You reach the outer wall. You look back. The horse glows now, haloed in flame, half melted by the very trust it manipulated. And even though you're coughing and running and mourning, part of you still thinks it was a beautiful horse. You feel the weight of bronze armor on your chest and the smug confidence of someone who thinks they've read their entire fate except the footnotes. You step into a training yard long emptied of shouts, where the sand still remembers the rhythm of battle drills and the wooden posts bear the scars of someone who didn't know how to hold back. The smell of sweat, oil, and old leather clings to the air, and somewhere in the distance, a spear thunks into a target with the finality of a period. This is where he once stood, Achilles, son of Thetis, golden boy of prophecy and parental overcompensation, the demigod so breathtakingly good at war that poets ran out of adjectives trying to describe his abs. And you are now walking in his shadow, except you notice it's limping slightly. And that's a detail most ballads tend to skip. Achilles didn't start out arrogant. He started out dipped literally by his mother into the river Styx, held by the heel because apparently even sea nymphs forget physics when they're in a hurry. You pass a pool now, dark and still, and you can almost see her reflection as she lowers him in, whispering prayers that no child should have to carry on their skin. She meant well, she just didn't flip him. Years later, Achilles grows into that destiny like someone slipping on armor made of ego and lightning. You watch him storm through battles like he's dancing, his spear always half a second faster than human reaction, his shield catching not just blades but admiration. Warriors fall, poets swoon, enemies develop sudden, unexplained illnesses rather than face him on the field. You sit on a stone ledge, watching him practice shirtless, obviously, as he flips his hair back in a way that is 70% combat strategy, 30% aesthetic flourish. But there's a shadow. There always is. A whisper of fate he refuses to acknowledge. A thin line between glory and end that he treats like a riddle he sure doesn't apply to him. Then comes Patroclus. You see them together, laughing, arguing, fighting like brothers, breathing like lovers. The war rages, and Achilles pouts, refuses to fight. Moral reasons, personal drama, bad vibes, it's complicated. But Patroclus steps in, borrows his armor, and the field erupts in a storm of mistaken identity, pride, and heartbreak. You're standing just outside the tent when Achilles screams, not in rage, but in loss, in a sound that strips the sky. His grief is not poetic, it's primal, and suddenly, he doesn't care how the prophecy ends. He returns to war not as a hero, but as something else, something sharper, darker. You follow him across the plains of Troy, stepping over bodies already cooling, until he finds Hector. And what happens next is not a duel. It's not glory. It's a reckoning. You close your eyes, but you still hear the thud, still feel the chariot dragging what used to be a prince across the dirt. But fate is patient, and Paris pretty. Unassuming, decorative Paris draws his bow, and from the walls of Troy, a single arrow flies, guided by Apollo, they say, a god's touch on a coward's hand, and it finds the one place left untouched, unblessed, unprepared, the heel. You kneel now in the place where he fell, not in battle pose, but slumped, surprised, betrayed by the very part of himself he never thought to guard. The sand drinks the blood, the armor clinks softly as it settles. The legend ends not with a roar, but with a breathless, "Oh," the kind of silence that follows when even the gods look away. You rise, you walk, you taste salt on your lips and the bittersweet thrill of a journey that refuses to end. You're not quite sure how long you've been on this ship. The wood creaks beneath your bare feet in that old, familiar rhythm. The kind of sound that lets you know you're neither sinking nor arriving, just endlessly floating in the space between destinations. You sit by the edge of the deck, your fingers brushing the ropes frayed by too many storms, and you watch as another island appears on the horizon, promising shelter, maybe adventure, probably a curse. The sails flap above you like giant sighs, tired of catching winds that seem to lead in circles. This is what it means to travel with Odysseus, king of Ithaca, master of speeches, part-time war hero, full-time detour enthusiast. The war ended 10 years ago. Remember that Troy burned, Achilles fell, and the Greek kings all packed up and headed home. But not your captain. No. Odysseus, ever the overachiever, decided the straight line was too predictable. So, now you've seen things terrible, beautiful things. The Cyclops Cave, for example, where you hid behind sheep and whispered prayers you didn't believe. The air thick with the stench of cheese and death. You still remember the sound of that eye popping. You remember how Odysseus couldn't help bragging as you escaped, shouting his name back like a fool who forgot what revenge meant to a blinded giant. Then there was Circe, all honeyed words and suspicious wine. You feel her presence still, the way she spoke as if every sentence was a test you didn't know you were taking. You watched your crewmates turn into pigs actual, pigs not, metaphorical ones. Though, let's be honest, some of them were halfway there already. You lingered longer than you should've. She had good bread, better threats. And who could forget the sirens? You didn't hear them? Not really. Odysseus had himself tied to the mast like some melodramatic poet, while the rest of you stuffed your ears with wax and prayed your knots held. He screamed. Of course. Said it was the most beautiful agony he'd ever known. You rolled your eyes and kept rowing. Now the sea stretches before you, like a riddle you're tired of solving. The sun burns above with a kind of relentless memory. And the gods, those fickle, gleaming overachievers, continue to toy with the sails of your little wooden ambition. Poseidon hasn't forgiven Odysseus, which seems petty but entirely on brand. You get the sense that each new island is just another test, another lesson wrapped in monsters and metaphors. Sometimes you dream of Ithaca, not the real one. The idea, a quiet shore, a warm hearth, a wife who hasn't remarried, a son who still remembers your face. But every time you think you're close, something shifts, the stars move, the wind changes, another god takes offense. And still, Odysseus stands at the bow, eyes scanning the waves like they owe him answers. He smiles that smile again, the one that says, "We're almost there." Even though everyone on this boat knows he's lying. You lie back on the planks. The sky spins lazily above, painted with gulls and ghosts. You breathe in salt, old rope, distant thunder. You close your eyes. Just for a moment, you feel the ache in your shoulders before you even pick up the club. You wake up with straw in your hair and lion fur tangled around your ankles. And for a brief, blessed moment, you forget you're Hercules. Just a man, lying under a fig tree, the air thick with bees and bruises, the scent of sweat and iron still clinging to your skin like regret. But then the memories return in a slow, muscle-deep wave, the labors, the blood, the things you were asked to kill, clean, chase, carry, or politely wrestle into submission. You sit up, bones groaning like old armor, and glance at your hands. They're not heroic, they're swollen, calloused, a little stained from something that might be ichor. You stopped asking, they called it penance, a king's idea of justice wrapped in tasks no mortal could survive. But you're not quite mortal. Are you half god, half walking cautionary tale? The first task was supposed to be simple. Go slay the Nemean lion, the one with fur no blade could cut. You remember its breath before the fight hot, rank, filled with the boredom of a creature that's never been hunted before. You beat it to death with your fists. You wore its skin afterward not because it was fashionable, but because your own felt too thin. You thought it couldn't get worse. Then came the Hydra, multiple heads, all bite, no sense of humor. You burned each neck as it fell, the stink of cauterized flesh curling up your nose for days. Your nephew helped you. No one mentions him in the songs. Heroes don't get sidekicks, just trauma. The labors blurred after that. Clean the Augean stables, said the king, smiling like a man who's never seen divine manure up close. You redirected 2 rivers with your bare hands. It smelled like ambition and cow ghosts. Next, the Stymphalian birds, sharp feathers, worse attitudes. You used a rattle gifted by Athena to scare them off, which was effective but deeply undignified. Hercules the mighty, flapping a divine noisemaker like an annoyed grandmother. You stole a boar, wrestled a bull, chased a hind so fast she once lapped the moon. At some point, you realized this wasn't justice. It was punishment by absurdity. Every task designed not just to challenge you, but to humiliate you with a wink. Bring back the girdle of Hippolyta, the queen of the Amazons. Sure, nothing says redemption like politically charged lingerie theft. You remember the Garden of the Hesperides, golden apples, eternal youth. Sounds lovely until you're negotiating with a dragon in Atlas, who somehow managed to talk you into holding up the sky. Your arms remember, the burn, the silence of a sky that didn't care how strong you were. You lifted it anyway, because what else do you do when the world keeps handing you impossible things? And then Cerberus, not kill him, not chain him, drag him, alive, from the underworld, no sword, just your hands and your stubborn refusal to die on anyone else's terms. You entered the land of the dead and left footprints. You saw shades of your past, and worse, your future, but you didn't stop, because that was the final labor, or so they said, now. You lie under the fig tree, and the world, for once, is quiet. No king shouting, no beasts snarling, just bees, just the wind. You realize, with a dull kind of calm, that you were never being tested, you were being broken, sculpted into something people could point to and say, that's strength. While ignoring the cost of it, you roll over, your muscles throb, your breath slows, you let go, you feel the chill before you see the gate, and somewhere in the distance, someone sighs who hasn't drawn breath in centuries. You step off the boat and the air changes. It doesn't get colder, it gets heavier, like every molecule remembers something you'd rather forget. The water behind you is black, not just in color, but in intention. The kind of black that swallows sound, sense, and second thoughts. You're not dead. Not technically, but you are in the land of the dead, and that's a technicality only living people care about. Charon doesn't speak as you disembark. He's said enough over the millennia, and besides, conversation is overrated when your passengers rarely come back. You glance back at his sunken eyes once, and he almost smirks. Almost. The path ahead is made of ash-packed soil and forgotten names. Every step kicks up memory dust, and the only light comes from a soft glow that doesn't reveal much, it just hints. You walk, your breath unnaturally loud, bouncing off stone walls that feel like they've been carved by regret. Up ahead, There's a line? Of course there's a line. Even in death, bureaucracy reigns. You shuffle forward, the soul in front of you muttering about some unfinished debt. The one behind clicking their phantom teeth like they're late to a dinner party they never wanted to attend. You feel watched, not in the ominous, something's behind you sense, but in the a god is probably judging your haircut kind of way. That's when you see Cerberus, or rather, you hear him first, the triple growl of a beast who guards the gates not out of malice, but boredom. His eyes, all 6 of them, blink at different intervals, and his tail possibly also alive. Possibly also annoyed, thumps the ground like thunder with rhythm. You walk past him with the respectful nod one reserves for very large creatures who have 3 mouths and 0 impulse control. One of his heads snorts. You take that as permission. Beyond him, the gates, bronze, immense, deeply dramatic. The kind of doors that were clearly designed by someone overcompensating. They creak open without being touched, and you step inside. Welcome to the underworld, where the lighting is moody, the decor is minimalist despair, and everyone's been here longer than they intended. You walk past the plains of Asphodel, where ordinary souls wander like confused tourists in a museum that only has one exhibit their past. They murmur, they repeat. You swear one of them is reenacting his 3rd grade spelling bee loss on a loop. Eternal repetition, the favorite punishment of the mildly guilty. You pass the judges Minos, Rhadamanthus, and Aeacus debating whether someone deserves the fields of Elysium or a long, dramatic detour through Tartarus. Their robes are stained with centuries of second guesses. You don't stop. This isn't your destination. You descend deeper. You feel the pull not physical, but emotional, like gravity made of memory. You see shadows that used to be heroes, kings, poets, lovers, all faded, all equal now. One ghost waves at you enthusiastically. You wave back, then wonder if you just offended someone by acknowledging their continued existence. Eventually, you reach the palace. Hades is there, not with fire or fury, but with paperwork. He's dressed like someone who long ago gave up trying to be terrifying and now just wants the forms filed correctly. Persephone is beside him, her expression unreadable in the way only someone who lives half in spring and half in sorrow can manage. She offers you pomegranate seeds out of politeness. You politely decline, and as you sit, waiting your turn to ask questions you're not sure are allowed, you realize something. The underworld is not cruel, it is indifferent, and in that indifference lies a certain peace. No more striving, no more proving, just stillness. You feel it settle into your bones, a quiet that hums not like silence, but like surrender. And for the first time, you understand why some people never want to leave. You close your eyes for a moment, just a moment. You feel the weight of curiosity settle in your palms like something small and dangerous pretending to be innocent. You sit in a sunlit room lined with columns that smell faintly of cedarwood and old expectation. And beside you sits a box not large, not gilded, not even particularly beautiful, but somehow magnetic, like it knows you're trying not to think about it. The lid is sealed with just enough care to make you wonder why. The air holds that breathless tension of a moment before something breaks. Not loudly, but irrevocably, and you are Pandora. Or rather, you're beside her, watching. Feeling her fingers hover again and again above the latch as if time will someday give her permission to be curious without consequence. Spoiler, it won't. They say she was the first woman, crafted by the gods not out of love, but strategy. Shaped by divine hands like a diplomatic weapon disguised as a bride. Zeus didn't invent spite, but he definitely gave it excellent packaging. Each god added something: beauty from Aphrodite, music from Apollo, charm from Hermes, and just enough hunger to ask questions when everyone else remained silent. And then, of course, they gave her the box, no explanation, just "don't open this." The divine equivalent of leaving a glowing red button in a child's room and whispering, "Totally not important." You watch her carry it, day after day, place to place, and people smile, admire her, praise her poise, but never ask what she carries. They assume she won't look. That obedience outweighs wonder. That beauty cancels out intellect. But you know better. You feel it too thrum beneath the surface, the hum of possibilities denied, the echo of something waiting. And one day, she opens it, not because she's weak, but because no one ever really told her why she shouldn't. A quiet lift of the lid, a rush of wind that doesn't touch her hair but knocks the breath from the room. Out comes chaos, not fire or demons or cinematic storms, but things that feel worse because they're quieter. Sickness, creeping into bones, greed, wrapping its arms around ambition, jealousy, whispering in friendships, war, not as clash and bang, but as planning, policy, power. It pours out like spilled ink, staining everything it touches. You don't see it, you feel it, like a shift in temperature that never returns to normal. And Pandora pour, brilliant, tricked Pandora slams. The lid shut too late. Inside, there's one thing left, small, flickering, unruly, hope. It curls in the corner of the box like a sleeping moth and refuses to leave. Not because it's safe, but because it's stubborn. She keeps it. Not because she understands it, but because after everything else, she needs something that doesn't ask questions back. You sit beside her now. The box is closed. Again. The world's a little darker, but it breathes. You feel the pulse of drums through the ground, the air thick with honey and something reckless. As laughter drifts like perfume, you wander into the edge of a forest where the moon seems to hang just a little too low, and the shadows tangle around your ankles like old friends you haven't seen since last spring. The leaves glisten with dew, or maybe with spilled wine. It's hard to tell when the branches themselves seem to sway to a rhythm only half the world can hear. There's a beat. You don't know where it's coming from. Maybe from your own chest. Maybe from somewhere deep underground. The kind of beat that promises trouble and joy in equal measure. And you can't help but follow it. You push aside a curtain of ivy, and the world explodes into color and noise and movement. There are people everywhere, but they don't look quite right. Eyes too bright, hair too wild, a laugh that starts as a giggle and ends in a howl. Satyrs leap across bonfires, maenads spin in circles until the stars blur, and someone pours honey into your cup with a wink. Someone else hands you a mask shaped like a fox, or maybe it's a goat. You put it on, and for a moment, your worries fall away with your name. Dionysus is at the center of it all. Of course, draped in leopard skin and lounging on a pile of cushions that smell of citrus and something more dangerous. He tips his cup, and the world tips with it. He smiles at you, slow and sideways, and you're not sure if he's inviting you in or daring you to run. You stay, because here, in the flicker of torchlight and drumbeat, nothing bad seems permanent, and everything ridiculous feels possible. You dance, or maybe you just sway, letting the music lift your feet until you can't feel the difference between body and melody. Someone presses a cluster of grapes into your hand, and the juice runs down your wrist, sticky sweet. The taste is rich, alive, a little wild. Someone else laughs and tells a story you don't quite follow, about gods and mortals, love and mistakes. But it doesn't matter. The laughter makes more sense than the words. You feel your heart loosen, your thoughts scatter, and the night wraps itself around your shoulders like a velvet cloak. It goes on for hours, or maybe for days. The torches never burn out. The music never truly ends. And for once you stop measuring time in worries and start counting moments by smiles. There is a freedom here, soft and wild. With just a hint of danger, you know morning will come. You know there will be consequences, maybe an olive wreath missing. Maybe a goat asleep in your bed. Maybe just the vague memory of saying something terribly honest to someone who only ever existed in dreams. But for now, the drums are soft, the air is warm, and the god of wine raises his cup one more time. The world blurs around the edges, the firelight flickers gold on your skin, and you feel the delicious relief of not having to be careful. Not for tonight. Not until the music finally fades. You step softly into the silver dusk that lingers on the edges of the wild. And for a moment, you think you might be alone. But the world is too full, too bright, too charged with the kind of silence that means someone extraordinary is watching. The breeze tastes of sweet laurel and cool river water. It moves over your skin, gentle but purposeful. The way an artist's brush moves across the first blank canvas of the night, somewhere in the shadow. A deer startles, freezes, then bolts, hooves barely making a sound against the moss. You follow, not with your feet, but with your breath. And you realize the rhythm in your chest is not entirely your own anymore, as if it's being plucked by fingers more elegant than any mortal's could ever be. Then you hear it, the slow, golden vibration of strings tuning in the dark. The whisper of a bow against the silence, the first crystal clear note that rings through the air, so pure that for an instant, the trees seem to pause their swaying just to listen. Apollo is nearby, lounging against a sun-warmed rock that has somehow held its heat long after dusk has claimed the rest of the forest. His hair gleams like sunlight on honey, his white tunic is smudged with dust and ink, and his sandals dangle lazily from one foot, as if he's already halfway to standing, halfway to running, halfway to nowhere in particular. In his lap, the lyre glows softly, strings gleaming with gold, fingers poised above them like dancers frozen in a tableau. He smiles without looking up, the sort of smile that makes you want to both trust him and immediately check your pockets. You get the feeling Apollo is always halfway to something else, a song, a prophecy, a romance, a disaster. He's the kind of god who could make you fall in love with music or make you weep just by humming the right note. Tonight, though, he just begins to play soft, low, the melody rising like a sun that isn't in a hurry, all warmth and light, the sort of music that makes you forget your name, then remember it again in a new way. The air shifts. You catch the scent of wild mint and cedar smoke. There is another presence in the wood squieter, sharper, older than any song. Artemis, twin to Apollo, shadow to his radiance, is never far when the moon is new and the night is clean. She moves the way a rumor moves quietly. Everywhere, suddenly inescapable. You catch a glimpse of her between the pines, her tunic hitched above her knees, her bow held loose but ready, her hair braided back with twigs and silver threads. There's mud on her knees, a smudge of ash on her cheek, and a look in her eyes that says she knows where every creature in the woods has slept tonight. And maybe every night before this one? She stops. The forest hushes. You feel every heartbeat in your body echo the draw and release of her breath. Apollo's song twines around her silence, filling up the spaces between the trees, and for a moment, the world holds its breath. Then Artemis steps into the clearing and the starlight pools at her feet, the same way sunlight gathers around Apollo, and you realize this is what balance feels like, light and shadow, song and silence, certainty and wild possibility sharing the same space, not competing, but completing, the universe stitched together not by answers, but by the conversation between opposites. She nods to Apollo, and for once, he stops playing. She raises her bow, not to threaten, but to promise. A single arrow nocked, feathers white and gleaming. She lets it fly. It lands at the base of a nearby tree, barely disturbing a single leaf, so gentle it might have been a kiss instead of a weapon. Then, as if on cue, a family of deer emerges from the underbrush, completely unbothered, pausing to drink from the river that splits the clearing in two. Artemis smiles, and you can see in that moment she is not the goddess of the hunt because she loves blood, but because she loves the wild things enough to know when to let them live. Apollo strums his lyre, filling the air with sunlight and possibility. Artemis stretches her arms, and the moon rises behind her, cold and proud. The woods shimmer between gold and silver, and you find yourself caught in the space between song and silence, between knowing and wondering, between the comfort of patterns and the thrill of breaking them. You remember suddenly that these twins, though so different, are inseparable, and their quarrels loud, legendary, sometimes hilarious, always end with a truce, a new song, a new hunt, a new story for the stars to overhear. You sit quietly on a patch of soft moss, feeling the ground beneath you vibrate with each note, each footfall, each arrow's gentle whisper through the air. Apollo glances over and winks. Artemis raises an eyebrow, not unkindly. You know you are welcome here, not as a hero, not as prey, but as a witness to balance, a participant in the ritual of dawn and dusk that will never end. The river babbles beside you, catching starlight and secrets, carrying them downstream to be forgotten and found again. A bird calls, somewhere. A wolf howls back. The forest holds you. The gods hold you. You breathe, and you know. Somewhere deep in your chest where the world's music collects. That balance is not stillness, it is a dance, an argument. A duet that never quite resolves, but always begins again. You wander from the woods where the gold and silver of Apollo and Artemis are still echoing in your memory, and you find yourself following a winding path paved with broken spears and scattered olive branches. The ground itself bearing the scars of old lessons and older quarrels. The kind of place where even the grass seems to grow with purpose. The air is heavier here, thick with the scent of sweat, polished bronze, ink, and sometimes just the faintest trace of something burning, a warning, or a promise. It's hard to say. Ahead. The great stone facade of a city rises, its walls proud, and its gates flanked by statues of owls, swords, and shields. Athens, of course, a city that worships wisdom but never quite forgets the thrill of a good argument. At the heart of this place, under the shade of an ancient olive tree, Athena is teaching, not the way schoolmasters teach, but the way storms teach, unexpectedly, decisively, with a clarity that burns away confusion and leaves only a clean, sharp understanding in its wake. She stands tall in gleaming armor, her helmet pushed back to reveal hair braided with gold thread and laurel, her eyes the color of a coming storm, her shield, propped against the tree, is etched with scenes of battles that haven't happened yet, and her spear glimmers with anticipation. Around her sits a circle of mortals, young men with wide eyes and notched swords, old women with hands calloused from weaving and wisdom, even a handful of children whose only weapons are questions. You step closer, feeling the hum of thought in the air, a buzzing sharper than any fly or arrow. Athena speaks, and when she does, the world seems to pause just long enough to hear her. Her voice is not soft, but neither is it harsh. It's simply inevitable, like gravity or a good idea. She teaches not just about wardhoe, there is plenty of that. Tactics and formations and the elegant math of winning, but about law, about justice, about when to build and when to stop destroying. She uses stones and bits of rope, sand drawings and stray leaves, and every so often, she tosses a riddle into the circle, not to confuse but to provoke the kind of thinking that lasts longer than swords or kings. You watch as the students lean forward, eager and a little afraid, and you realize that wisdom is less about knowing answers than about learning which questions matter. Suddenly, there is a clatter from the edge of the clearing. Ares arrives. You hear him before you see him, the scrape of iron boots, the slam of shield against shield, the loud sigh of someone who would rather be smashing things than listening. His everything Athena isn't loud, brash, armored head to toe in battered bronze, red plume trailing behind him like the tail of a comet that refuses to burn out. He strides into the circle, sword drawn, eyes narrowed in suspicion and maybe just a hint of envy. The students shrink back a little. Athena does not. She greets him with a nod so slight it's almost a joke, and you can tell she's not bothered, she's entertained. Ares growls, complains that all this talking is making warriors soft, that real battles aren't won with words, and you can see, just beneath the bravado, the insecurity of a god who's never quite understood why mortals pray to Athena for victory more often than they pray to him. He waves his sword for emphasis, accidentally knocking over a pile of pebbles that Athena had just arranged into a perfect phalanx. She sighs quietly, the way only the truly patient Canaan with a flick of her hand, rearranges them, restoring order, restoring sense, as if chaos were just another puzzle to be solved. Athena turns the interruption into a lesson. She asks the students what makes a city strong, not walls or weapons, but laws, ideas, alliances, the shared stories and clever inventions that keep people safe long after the fighting ends. She tells the tale of the wooden horse, how a trick of thought toppled a city when armies could not, and you can see Ares bristle, the story landing like a pebble in his shoe. She speaks of building, of weaving new possibilities, and as she does, olive leaves drift down from the branches, settling on shoulders like tiny medals. Ares looks up at the tree, mutters something about boring old trees, and slumps onto a stone at the edge of the circle, pretending not to listen but never quite leaving. the lesson continues. Athena speaks of the pen as a weapon sharper than any blade, of architecture as the frozen music of the mind, of strategy as the gentle art of surviving tomorrow. The mortals listen, soaking up each word, and you feel the energy of understanding ripple through the group. Ares glances at the children, sees them listening, and scowls, but stays. The sun shifts, the day softens. The city around you buzzes with life merchants haggling, philosophers arguing, poets reciting verses that Athena occasionally corrects with a raised eyebrow. In the distance, the Parthenon gleams, and in the heart of it all, wisdom and war share the same ground, not as enemies, but as siblings doomed to circle one another for eternity, never quite merging, never truly parting. As twilight gathers, Athena looks up and meets your gaze. Her eyes are bright, unreadable, calm. She knows you have questions, knows you might never have all the answers, but encourages you to keep asking anyway. Beside her, Ares sharpens his sword on a stone, grumbling, but you see a smile tugging at his mouth, because even he can't resist a good story, or a world that's a little wiser for his sisters. Patience. You rise from the circle, mind humming with new thoughts, body warmed by the quiet power of learning. The day's worries softened into something manageable, something gentle. Night falls, and as the city lights flicker on, you realize there is a special kind of peace in knowing both when to fight and when to think, and that the greatest strength is sometimes in restraint, in creation, in the slow, persistent work of building a world worth defending. You step away from the firelight, leaving behind the city's clamor, the olive trees and marble columns fading into darkness as the world softens to a gentle blur. And you find yourself walking a path that is neither new nor old, but one that circles itself, winding back through memories half remembered and stories half believed. Each footfall echoing softly in a land where endings and beginnings are just two sides of the same silver coin. The air is cool, the stars crowding in above you, close enough to touch, each one humming quietly with the songs and mistakes of the gods, the triumphs and regrets of mortals, the dreams and laughter of storytellers who never quite knew when to stop talking and start listening to the hush between words. Your hands brush tall grass wet with dew, your shoulders light for the first time since you began this journey, and you feel the pulse of the earth beneath your skin, slow and deep, an ancient drumbeat that neither rushes nor waits, but simply is. You remember each tale as if it were your own, the moment you peered through marble columns at dawn's first blush and tasted the promise of immortality. The electric thrill of thunder overhead when gods squabbled and mortals hid under tables. The ache of regret that clung to every grudge and every desperate hope. The weight of armor, the wildness of dance, the sweet sorrow of questions that never had straight answers. You recall the hush that fell when a goddess was born from a headache, the salt sting on your lips as cities rose and fell by the tide, the dizzy joy of forgetting your worries in wine and music, the quiet awe of seeing yourself in the eyes of monsters and in the shadows of heroes. You walked through fields where horses hid secrets, where heels became legends, where a journey home could last a lifetime, and every labor left its mark not just on the world, but on your heart, now. With the wind whispering lullabies in a language older than the gods, you find the circle closing, the stories that started in thunder and ended in whispers, the heroes who were never just strong, but clever, kind, foolish, broken, healing. Their voices tangle around you, warm as a blanket, as if to remind you that all tales are family, and you are welcome at their table. You sense the gods drifting into their temples, satisfied or still grumbling, their squabbles fading for now. Mortals curl in their beds, dreaming of things both real and impossible. And the monsters swell. Even monsters must sleep sometime. The world grows quiet. You pause, letting the hush fill your chest. And you realize the story is not ending, just folding itself into the night, to be found again when the stars change, when the dawn calls, when someone else sits by a fire and says, "Did you ever hear about the time you smile, you breathe, you listen for the last echo of laughter and the first note of tomorrow's song? You know, now." that no story is ever truly finished, that every ending is just a doorway, a window, a small crack in the world where hope lingers and dreams begin again. And as you settle into the softness of darkness, letting the warmth of every myth and every lesson seep into your bones, you understand the greatest secret the Greeks ever shared: life, like legend, is never really over, just patiently waiting for someone to pick up the thread and spin it onward. And now the myths are drifting away. As softly as the last embers falling in a bronze brazier, the gods are finally dozing. Yes, even Zeus can't argue forever. Heroes are snoring under their olive trees, and even the monsters are curling up, just a little less scary, a little more like the world's odd, lovable house cats. The lyre's last note has faded, the fire is all that's left. So, I'm slipping away too, leaving you in the gentle crackle of an old Greek hearth. You hear the wood settle, sparks popping quietly, warmth humming low, the world outside hushed and ancient, as if Olympus itself were breathing slowly, letting the night do its quiet work. If you're still awake, you're more stubborn than Achilles, and if you've nodded off halfway through, don't worry, Hermes will carry you to morning faster than any ship Odysseus ever sailed. So, next time you wonder whether to seek wisdom like Athena, or just throw a party like Dionysus, remember, the wisest heroes sometimes just needed a good rest, and even the best stories are better after a nap.